Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I do that. So if I make a noise in here, you can't hear me. But good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Good to see you. I'm glad you could join us again. Jeffrey and Bernadette, I appreciate you coming in here live. I'm sure there'll be a couple of people that join us here. Got some interesting email this week, and I appreciate everybody kind of chiming in. I got stuff rolling on my desk here. Hold on. I appreciate everybody kind of chiming in. Let me know what you thought about this. I got a really nice email from a gentleman. Maybe I'll talk about it if I see him come in. I'll throw him a shout out here and talk about a little bit about what he was talking about. And Bernadette, maybe we can get to look at a couple of pieces of hers today too, if we have time. This stuff here for me is just kind of, I want to kind of leave it open and work through it. I want to give the idea here is to kind of be interactive more so than not. And I can throw some fodder out there. We can kind of discuss or hopefully get some interaction on it. And today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the two things. Becker is always at the center of these ideas, right? Ernest Becker and the denial of death and those kinds of ideas that he proposed. And then we have a whole nother element to it called terror management theory, where Solomon, Greenberg, and Kaczynski kind of came in and wrote the book, The Worm at the Core, which again I read on this YouTube channel for those of you that followed along. So Becker and Bernadette mentioned this in an email too. Becker's a little bit, I don't know, academic. I don't know if he's academic. I think he's written in a way. The book was written in the early 1970s, late 60s and early 70s. So it's definitely, leaning kind of misogynistic with his pronouns and stuff. It's always he and that kind of thing, which is typical for that time period. And Becker did not like Freud much, but then in this book, he comes around and kind of acknowledges Freud. So he does get off on tangents a little bit, but the main part of the book, The Denial of Death, and there's two other really good ones, The Birth and Death of Meaning and Escape from Evil. Becker's whole thing is about what really turned me on to Becker was he had the same desire that I have or had in trying to understand human behavior, right? Why we do what we do when we do it. That's the basis of everything. And so as artists, as we come into this, not psychologists, not academics, not, and I'm definitely no life coach. I'm no psychologist. I'm not trying to give anybody any advice in that realm. What I'm trying to offer here is a look into these psychological theories, these really potent ideas that Becker came up with. Look what the Greenberg, Solomon, and Kaczynski did with them in providing empirical data and evidence showing that those are really powerful, and there's a lot of good evidence to support these ideas. And then allowing the artist to come in and say, hey, how can I make this work in my life? One thing when you read Becker, especially, he was infatuated with Otto Rank, a German, a protege of Freud's, a German psychoanalyst. Was he German or Czech? I can't remember now, but Austrian maybe. But Otto Rank was really fascinated by the artist and how the artist's mind works. And really what it is, the bottom line is really that I mentioned this last week, artists, the creative types, or the creative mind, or however you want to frame this or put the title on, creative types have a tendency to be, number one, to be more aware of their anxiety, of their angst, of their, Becker calls it terror, a rumbling, this idea that we know we have a very finite time here. Artists tend to be a little bit more aware of that than the average citizen, quote unquote. And again, I want to go back. We're going to look at a little bit of Rick Rubin video this morning, or on this video, this session, and we're going to talk a little bit about creativity in Rubin's sense of the word. And I really like Rick Rubin, the Creative Act, A Way of Being. It's a wonderful book. If you haven't read it, please do, or put it on your list at least. And he really delineates and opens up some of these potential ways. He scratches the surface. I want to tell you a quick little story here about these ideas, what I'm trying to do here, why this is important to you as a creative person. You may not even know it yet, or you might even be wondering, why am I listening to this? Who is this guy? What is he talking about? I thought this was about collodion. It's not really about collodion. It's about the artist's struggle with their own emotions and their own death anxiety and their own anxiety surrounding our limited time, why we create, the reasons behind why we create, and those kinds of things. So anyway, this story really gets at the heart of what I'm trying to do, and it's really quick. And I think did I hear it from, I was just in that course with James Rowe. I think James Rowe said it, but anyway, it may be an old story. I don't know. There's a woman in a village. She goes down to the river to gather some water in a bucket, and she's scooping water up out of the river. And here comes a baby floating down the river, and she lunges out. She grabs the baby and takes the baby to the shore. And she looks around, and she goes back out to grab her bucket of water she set on a rock. And here comes another baby floating down the river. So she grabs another baby, the other baby out of the river. And pretty soon she's like yelling back at the village because all these babies are coming down the river. And she's only one person. It kind of reminded me of that Lucille Ball scene where they're trying to take the chocolates off the conveyor belt. Anyway, she had pretty soon she has a bunch of people down at the river where she's at, snatching these babies out of the river that keep coming down the river. Now there's a whole bunch of them coming down, 5, 6, 8 at a time. And so two of the villagers say, hey, we're going to go upstream and find out what's going on here, right? And they said, we need you here. We need to get these babies. We got to have you here. No, we're going to go upstream and find out where these babies are coming from, why they're being thrown in the river. That's what I'm doing here. We're going upstream to find out why these babies are being thrown in the river, not just taking babies out of the river. We want to know why these babies are being thrown in the river, right? So I don't know if you can take that as a good analogy or a bad analogy, whatever, but that's really the essence of what I'm trying to do. I want to go upstream, find out why we have this human behavior, find out how it applies to me creatively. And that's what I've tried to do over my, I've been doing photography for 40 years, maybe. I don't know. How old am I? I'm 35. So I guess it can't be 40 years, but it's somewhere close in there. And all the entire time, me working in this process, it could be anything, right? It doesn't, sculpting, painting, it doesn't matter. I really don't care the medium. This whole time, the entire time I was working on the projects that I did, these Becker questions were on my mind, right? So I didn't even know. I've been digging through this stuff. I found this as I was digging through some of my stuff. These are poems that I wrote for an exhibition I had in 1993 called Visions and Mortality. And this is about death anxiety, is what it's about. And when I read the statement to that work 32 years ago, or 30 to 31, 30, over 30 years ago, it was like, wow, I've been struggling with this stuff for so long, and now I have some answers. And that's kind of what I want to share with you, to see if your creative ideas, and I know they will, I guarantee you, these theories will open up creative ideas for you. So at the end of the day, that's what I'm trying to do. That's where we want to go. Hey, hello, Thilo. Good to see you, brother. I'm glad you could join us. That's where we want to go. That's what we want to do. So anyway, let's jump over here. And thank you for coming in, everyone. I'm going to share my screen. we're going to look at just a couple of these um, slides here. Let's see. Is that my, I think that's the one I want. Let's see. Yeah, that's me. So here we are today, the creative mind and mortality. I call artisan anxiety, really is what this is. We're trying to deal with the driving force of creativity and some of the ideas behind what we're doing here and why we're doing them. Oh, sorry. That's for the, sorry, I got the wrong one up here. Let me kill this. Present. Share the screen. That's what I want to do. July 20th. There we go. View slideshow. So it's my daughter's birthday. Our daughter's birthday today. She's 32. I gotta get a hold of her today. Every time I see July 20th. So here we go. This is my art and artisan anxiety, right? This is really kind of what we're getting at, the existential cause, and we're gonna kind of try to define some of these terms too, because I think there's a little bit of context that we need around these. So just real quick, existential terror and terror management theory, the root cause of existential anxiety. So what is existential anxiety? We'll talk about this in the next slide or a couple of slides. The existential anxiety that we're talking about is what we have built into our limbic system, right? The survive and reproduce, those two main drivers that why we exist. We're here to survive, stay alive, and reproduce. Now we bring in consciousness, and that consciousness brought about the knowledge that we're going to die. That's what creates the existential terror we're talking about, the existential anxiety. So it's a psychological death that we fear, not necessarily the physical death. I mean, some people are afraid of the physical act of dying. We're talking about the psychological death, the impermanence and personal insignificance that one might feel when you're, trying to deal with some of this, some of these issues and ideas. So, and we do that through symbolic immortality, like we talked about. So I just want to play a little bit of this. How many know who Rick Rubin is? You ever watched or listened to Rick Rubin? Yeah. How about you, Bernadette? No. Wow, you're gonna be turned on to a treat here. Rick Rubin, he's about my age, I think. He's right around my age. He was born in the early '60s, I think '63, and he's from New York. He's the guy. He's the music producer. Run DMC, Johnny Cash. Jeffrey could probably name a few others. But I picked up his book last year, I believe, when it came out, The Creative Act on a Way of Being. And I just want you to listen to him just for a couple of minutes here and listen to what he says about creativity and ego and all kinds of things. Now, he doesn't touch on, I love Rick Rubin and he's brilliant, but he's one of the guys down the river that's grabbing the babies and we want to go upstream, but he's still talking about the babies, which is cool. We need to save the babies, right? There's no problem saving the babies, but we want to get upstream and find out what the cause of these babies coming down the river are. So yes, Rick Rubin. Okay, yeah, there you go. Michael, thank you so much for your email. I'm going to talk about your email here in a little bit. I appreciate that. Love Rick Rubin. Wonderful book. I'm so glad you read it. That's really important. And I recommend any creative person read this book. It's just, it's not a narrative. It's like a bunch of thoughts put down and really some profound stuff, at least locally. So yes, Rick Rubin is a legend. I totally agree. Oh, Jeffrey said Slayer too? Really? He did Slayer? Wow, well, very cool. Didn't know that. Awesome. I just learned something. That's great. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of them. Anyway, let's play Rick Rubin. I'm going to mute myself and I'll come back in just a minute. We'll stop and maybe we'll kind of interact on a couple of pieces of this. Here we go.
There are no right answers for anything involved in art. We're all trying experiments to find a way. And even for the things that I work on, I don't have a set way that I do anything. I come to every project blank. I believe we know close to nothing about anything. If we embrace that not knowing, we'll have a healthier experience going through life. In some ways, the best art is open enough where the artist gets to have their experience when they make it, and then the audience gets to have their experience when they listen, and they don't have to be the same. There are no right answers for anything involved in art. We're all trying experiments to find a way. And even for the things that I work on, I don't have a set way that I do anything. I come to every project blank and I really listen to what the artist plays and says, and through what they explain they want to do, help find the best way to get there. I feel like it's more of a collaboration between people working together to make the best thing. It's not a boss-slave relationship at all. It's much more of a let's find our way. And we agree at the beginning of the process that if either of us or any of us don't like what's happening, we say it. And the goal is to keep working till we get to a point where we're all really happy with it. It's like if we make something that an artist likes and I don't like, or if that I like and they don't like, we haven't gone far enough. I don't want to listen to you and have any reaction happening when you're speaking. I want to be as neutral as possible. For me, my goal is not to form an opinion; it's to understand. So, if anything, I would draw you out further and just ask questions to really understand. And if you say, or if you say something that that somehow triggers me in a way I wonder how he came to that. I wouldn't challenge you. I would ask, like, oh, how did you find that? How did you get to that place? Ego in this. It doesn't, if everyone's there with the purpose of making the best thing we can, there's nothing else. There can't be any boundaries to that. I like the idea of getting to the essential, and I have a better idea now that I've done it for a while, but at the time it was purely an instinctual thing. And part of it is there's a sonic benefit, which is the less elements you have, you can hear each of the ones that are there. Ideas from somewhere else, 100%. But I think
have you asked questions about where from?
I believe we all are, though. I believe we are. We're vehicles for information that, when it's ready to come through, it comes through, and the people who have good antennas pick up the signal. But if I'm sure you've had an experience in your life where you've had an idea for something and you've not acted on it, and eventually someone else does it. And it's not because they're doing it because you had the idea and they stole your idea. It's because the time has come for that idea. And if
I want to stop it right there. So I really like his thoughts on this, right? So there's a couple of things here. I like the role of ego, what he talks about on the role of ego. And if you want more of this, you can read his book, definitely. But there's a bunch of clips you can find online about it on him. His ideas around ego. Now, I pose this question right now. We're out here live right now, anyway, on YouTube and StreamYard. And social media, if we start looking at social media, right now what we see now is terror management at its best. And when he talks about ego, this is how my brain changes that or translates that into my kind of interests and ideas. When he talks about ego, what he's talking about there is he's talking about narcissism, and trying to, our goal is to build our self-esteem, right? Remember all this terror management theory, and these ideas are driving us, trying to push death, our impending death out of our minds. So we surround ourselves with stuff that distract us and keep us busy. And those things also build up our self-esteem, our confidence, our self-esteem. Now, there's a fine line when you cross over from self-esteem into narcissism. There's a really weird fine line there. And so what he's talking about, he's actually talking about your ego, your desire, your desire to have your self-esteem boosted, or your adulation poured onto you so you feel good and you stave death awareness away. That becomes more important than the actual creation. So when I look at social media today, what I see and I'm not belittling these people at all. This is a completely normal human behavior. But what I see people doing is just begging for attention, like, please boost my self-esteem. Please fortify my self-esteem. And this is what I'm going to do. These are the great things I'm doing. These are and that's, Becker talks about, this is a very natural thing to do. This is what we do as human beings. We constantly are trying to fortify our self-esteem. And as an artist, you're really going to be out on a limb with this one, because now we're way out there. Now we're very aware of these feelings and these emotions and this need for acceptance and people to like the work and everything like that. Yeah, I do too. Yeah, Michael says, I love the idea that his purpose is not to have an opinion, but to understand what is being said. And that's beautiful. I totally agree with that. And that's the second point I was going to go to. The problem with that, and if you think about this, and I preached this for eons too, as you present work, if you want to tell somebody what it's about, if the person looking at the work truly wants to understand what it's about, you have to have those reasons to give them, or that you need to be able to communicate those ideas to them so they can understand what it's about. This is a big problem with a lot of artwork today, right? I mean, it's always been this way. But there's a lot of, quote, art being made in kind of the commercial vein, right? Kind of the, I want to make some money off of this, so I do portraits and I'm charging and look at the portraits and all that. But what they're doing is they're cloaking it. The people are cloaking it in this idea of creativity and art. What we're really talking about here, we're not talking about selling a 4x5 tintype for $50 to somebody on a pop-up somewhere, at a pop-up somewhere. We're talking about you making work that's deeply personal and deeply important to you, and you trying to work through that to explain it to the viewer. And let's say you're showing it to Rick Rubin. Well, Rubin says, just like Michael pointed out, Rubin says, it's not, I'm trying not to have an opinion. I'm trying to understand what the work is about. So it's really important when you come to, if you're going to present work, or you're going to show work, and not in this environment, because we may look at a couple of pieces from Bernadette today, so I don't want to put her on the spot. But the idea here is when you show work, or you're presenting work to somebody, and they're of the Rick Rubin mind frame, they're gonna just not form an opinion. They're going to be like open book, and you write what it is about it that you're doing, and they can understand it. That's what they're about. That's what really important to understand there. So the ego getting in the way, the ability to deliver, you have to have something to say about your work first, right? So you contemplating what is it the work is saying, and how do you want to communicate this, and then hopefully translating that to someone. So that's a really powerful, those are really powerful ideas to me. I'm going to jump over, sorry. I'm going to jump over here, and we're going to talk just briefly. I want to present this and see if what you think about it. I want to talk about what existentialism. Have you ever thought about the word existentialism? Because some of these words really are worth defining. Existentialism. I have been preoccupied with this idea for a while. I might even argue for decades and decades. Art fits in. This is what we do, right? This is the whole idea behind creating work this way is really what we're talking about in essence, are these ideas around existentialism. So this is how it's defined normally. Now, you may have a little variation on this, but it's a philosophical movement that explores the nature of existence, freedom, and the human condition. We talked about what the human condition is, right? So that existential existence, freedom, and human condition, it emphasizes individual experience, choice, and inherent meaning or lack thereof in life. And the core principles or themes of existentialism. So right off the bat, you can see how artists fit very well into these existentialist ideas, because if you look at art in the 30,000, 60,000 foot view, way up there in a broad context, art really deals with those very things. The nature of existence, freedom's a little, we can define that a little more, but the human condition for sure. So let's see, existence precedes essence. What do you think that means? I mean, I guess you can read the definition there, but this is an age-old argument, right? That existence precedes essence. So you know what it is to exist, but what is an essence? Who was it? The old Greek philosopher. Oh my God. I'll think of his name. Not Socrates, not Plato. Starts with an A. Oh my God, I'm drawing a blank. Anyway, he said, Aristotle, thank you. Jeannie hooked me up. Thank you. Aristotle said that he talks about the essence of things. And what are the essence of things? So if an axe were alive, the essence of an axe would be to chop. If the essence, if you could pluck your eyeball out and it could still function, the essence of your eyeball would be to see, right? That kind of thing. So, what's the essence of a human, right? So existence precedes essence. What's that essence? Before you have to exist, you have to be in place before essence can come along. And essence is what you do. What do you think? This is a great question for you. What is the essence of human beings? If a human being were alive, and we are alive, what is our purpose? What is the essence? Think about that one for a second. We'll give you some answers for it. Okay, so freedom and responsibility, make their own choices, comes with a burden of responsibility for the consequences of those choices. Individualism and subjectivity. The personal experience and perspective, that's what it's all about. Each person experiences the world subjectively, and so there's no universal truth applicable to all, meaning everything's kind of relevant. You can see where artists fit in really well with these ideas of existentialism. That's what turned me on. It was here in the, and then finally, authenticity. Authenticity involves living in accordance with one's true self and values rather than conforming to societal expectations or external pressures. So right there, we are addressing terror management theory and these Becker's theories, death anxiety and the denial of death, right there. We would rather, as creative people, live and deal with in our own views, our own ideas of the world. Not that we don't collaborate or do things like we're doing now. We do, of course, but you can see how existentialism really fits well with the creative types. Absurdity. If you've ever read Albert Camus, the Sisyphus myth, and he's written a lot of Jean-Paul Sartre. He's another existentialist. There's a lot of existentialist philosophers and psychologists even that address a lot of these ideas. But Camus, he's an absurdist, and that's what he mostly wrote about, is how absurd life is, and that's kind of part of existentialism for sure. Alienation, isolation. This is another big area in artwork that you can kind of explore. Feelings of alienation, isolation, estrangement. They're common themes. The individuals often feel disconnected from the world and from other people. And here we're going back to these ideas. Are you wrapped up in your cultural worldview? And is that taking care of your needs? Or are you kind of punching holes in that? That's not really fulfilling it. Most artists are going to find they're on the latter side of that. Death and mortality. There you go. Existentialism is frequently deals with the awareness of death and the finite nature of life. This awareness can lead to a deeper understanding of existence and motivate individuals to live more meaningful. And that's the whole idea of this. You have two things going for you here when you learn about these theories, as a human being and as an artist. As a human being, they're going to lift you up and make you grateful you're above the ground every single day that you are. And you're going to be more appreciative of things around you. And as an artist, you're going to have the tools and the interest and the drive to express ideas, personal thoughts about existence, about these things around you and the things you're going through. So really, really connected to us that way. There it is, anxiety and angst. The realization of one's freedom and the weight of responsibility can lead to existential anxiety or angst. This anxiety is a natural part of the human experience as individuals confront their choices and the meanings in their lives. We talked about this last time, about how people become wrapped up, or we like to use the word ensconced in their cultural worldview. So they're going to work and they're getting a promotion and they go to the ball game on the weekends and they watch the shows on the television and they've got their friends on going to dinner here, and they're all ensconced. All these things build their self-esteem. They feel good about it. I got a job. I got a family. I pay my bills. I'm a good citizen. Whatever it is, right? They're all going along. And we talked last time about what Becker and Solomon call these culturally constructed meat puppets. They're going along through life completely happy. And if you were to ask these people, this is what's really interesting. When you feel comfortable, you should address. You should go out and do your own little experiments this way. The next time it's comfortable and you're around people, ask them, or a person that you feel comfortable doing this, ask them, say, hey, do you ever think about your death? Do you ever think about what's going to happen when you die, or what it would be like not to be here or not to exist? And see what happens. A lot of times, and these are my personal experiences because I've been doing this for a little bit now. The number one response is this: what? I don't think about death. What do you mean? I never think about death. That's crazy, right? That's going to be number one. And then they're going to drone on a little bit about some of the details around that. That's probably a sure sign they are bombarded with death anxiety. They are just inundated with it. So they build up these cultural constructs and they really cling on to them. So they push all that out. So in other words, Becker's theories about culturally constructed meat puppets going through life, allowing the culture to dictate who you are and what you do and rewarding you through that. Remember Carl Jung, he said, make the unconscious conscious and it won't direct your life and you won't call it fate. In other words, he's saying, make these things conscious. Understand, think about your impending death once in a while. Be aware of it. It's not like you're dwelling on it to be morbid or weird. You're actually thinking about it and understanding that you have a finite time here. And as you get older, not that I am, but as you get older, see that death denial there? As you get older, these things become more and more relevant in your life. And there are some people, I doubt it's going to be me, but we'll see if I'm lucky enough. There are some people that grow older and become more comfortable with the idea or the thought of them dying, their death, right? They're kind of okay with it. I don't know. You'd have to really get in and dig into the psychological bones of that dig in the psychological dirt of that kind of thing. But I don't know how true that is. I think there probably is some realization after X amount of decades or years thinking about this as you get older, and it does come to your mind, and oh, that lump or that ache or this or that, whatever it is, right? Those scares you have become more and more frequent. You're a little less agile, you're a little less energetic, whatever it is, these things start creeping up. So there could be some truth in older folks not having as much death anxiety. Some have more. I doubt that's going to, I'm probably going to have more. Thilo said, at any street corner, the feeling of absurdity can strike you in the face. Yes, is that Camus? Isn't it? Isn't that Camus? Tell us, Thilo. I think that's Camus. Absurdity. If you're ever, you should look that up. You should look up and do a little study on absurdity. It's really interesting. So we confront the choices in our lives, the meaning in our lives, that kind of thing. Prominent existential philosophers include Jean-Paul Sartre, Friedrich Nietzsche, Martin Heidegger, and Soren Kierkegaard. And there's a lot more, but those are a few of them. And this is where I want to kind of segue into Michael Wellman. Michael wrote me an email yesterday or day before, a few days ago, whatever. Really nice email, and I appreciate it, Michael. He said we had a little email conversation. He said he was fascinated about death. And he talked about, it's the first time I've ever received an email outside the psychology realm that I kind of tread in, that somebody quoted Martin Heidegger, which is really interesting. I love it. That really made my day, Michael. Yeah, Thilo says it's Camus. Right, that quote. At any street corner, the feeling of absurdity can strike you in the face. I've had it happen. I get it. I know exactly what you mean there, or he meant. But back to Michael, quoting Martin Heidegger. And I've talked about Martin Heidegger on here before. I've really kind of Time and Being, it's in German, it's translated from German. Martin Heidegger, the problem with Martin Heidegger is, for some people, or a lot of people, and I think this was a problem for Becker, was that he was a Nazi. He was enrolled, signed up, and put in the ranks of the Third Reich. Now, it was in an academic setting, so his thing would have been, hey, they just kind of pushed me in there. But regardless, right, he had some really good insight into these ideas. But sometimes, people's status is a little tough to get beyond. So I get it. I understand that. So there's a little bit on existentialism. Now, bear with me here, because I want to make sure as we go forward in this that we're all on the same page. So I'm going to play you a little clip here. Now, Alex O'Connor, and the other guy's a PhD. He just got his PhD in religion and something else that he's a co-anchor on here. They talk back and forth here. This is really good. This Alex O'Connor is a brilliant young bloke here. He's just a really smart young guy. And they're going to talk about terror management. The question is around religion. Is religion just death anxiety? Is the name of the video. But listen to what they say here. I think it's profoundly interesting, and it is profound, period. But I'm going to mute myself first, and then I'll play the video here.
Sigmund Freud said that religion will exist as long as human beings are afraid of death. Do you think he's on something with that?
Possible. I mean, related to this is the idea of religion as a terror management system. So we are, uniquely cursed as a species, that we know we're going to eventually die. And that thought, if we think about it too much, is traumatic. And we need to cope with it somehow. We need to negotiate it somehow. And so much of religion is, coping with the idea of death, thinking about the afterlife and what might come after this earthly life. It's full of stories about people that have cheated death and have survived death. And so much of it are rituals dealing with death, funerary rituals being some of the most conservative rituals out there. Like they look the same century after century after century, burying people in a special place and marking that grave. I mean, it's amazing how funerary rites stay the same over the course of millennia. I don't know too much about this scholarship, but from what I've read, it seems to be empirically proven. So if you show people So you'll have a control group where you just, show them normal images. And then you have the experiment group where you're showing them like deeply traumatic images, like dead bodies, decomposing bodies, and then measuring people who have strong belief in the afterlife versus people that don't have a strong belief in the afterlife. The people that believe in the afterlife are less distraught by the images.
Yeah, and Andrew, it's so much worse than that. I had a look at terror management theory as a subject, and it is one of the most interesting things that I've ever come across. Terror management theory is this idea that we have a self-preservation instinct within us to stay alive, but we also, as you say, are in a unique position among other animals of knowing about the inevitability of our own death. And this creates a psychological conflict. We want to preserve our lives, but we know that death is inescapably coming our way, and this produces terror, which needs to be managed, hence terror management theory. And so the idea is that people invent ideas to give themselves a sense of immortality, most obviously in religion, which literally promises immortality, but also in things like the creation of the nation or engaging in the arts, creating some magnum opus that will exist long after you die. These are seen by terror management theorists as ways of denying our own death. Ernest Becker's famous book, The Denial of Death, is the origin of this kind of thought. Now, some of the examples that I found are just incredible. The first study, or one of the earlier studies that was conducted, that you'll surely have heard of, was municipal court judges in Tucson, Arizona. Judges, of course, have a very clear set of values as part of their worldview, which is upholding the law. Terror management theory has an idea within it called the mortality salience hypothesis. And this is the idea that if these constructs of religion and community and engaging in arts are a result of the denial of death, then when people are reminded of their deaths, they should momentarily or temporarily have an increased need for affirming these religious ideas, these community spirits, this kind of thing. And so these judges in Arizona, they were given questionnaires. And the questionnaires, they weren't really heavy. They weren't showing them traumatic images. They weren't reminding them of their own death in a significant way, but they just mentioned death on the questionnaire. The control judges, no mention of death. The other judges, when they filled out the questionnaire, they were asked some questions about their own death. Maybe, what do you think happens when you die? This kind of thing. And afterwards, they were asked to do something very simple, which is to look at a court case, this one being the solicitation of prostitution. And they were just asked to recommend a bond for the prostitute. The judges who were reminded of their death before being asked recommended an average bond of $455. The control judges recommended an average of $50, which is a huge difference.
Massive. Yeah.
Just based on being reminded of death. Now, it's been shown that you can produce similar results just by flashing the word death on a screen so quick that the person doesn't even register that they've seen it. But by doing so, here are some for you. Christians become more derogatory towards Jews. Jews become more derogatory towards Muslims. Germans, reminded of their death, will sit further away from Turkish people. Americans become more physically aggressive to other Americans with different political views. Americans also become more enthusiastic about preemptive nuclear, chemical, and biological strikes against countries which pose no immediate threat to them. Iranians are more supportive of suicide bombing and more likely to consider becoming suicide bombers themselves after being reminded of death. It can also increase our contempt and disregard for nature. People who are reminded of their death are more likely to deny that humans are animals. They have more negative views towards animals, considering it more appropriate to kill them for reasons other than food and medical research. It also makes people more uncomfortable in natural settings. So there were some Dutch psychologists who showed Dutch people pictures of forests and then pictures of suburban neighborhoods and asked them which they liked the look of better. The control groups liked the look of the forest. They liked the look of the nature. But people who were reminded of their own deaths preferred the suburban neighborhoods. And the mortality salience hypothesis here says that the reason this is happening is because upon being reminded of your death, the need for these death-denying aspects of our community are increased. And so when you look at a forest, which represents the natural world, decay, death, this kind of thing, and you look at a suburban neighborhood, which represents community and the fostering of a sense of immortality and that this community will exist after you, you're more likely to prefer it. And all of this kind of stuff comes about just by being reminded of death, not having some long meditation on what it means to die, but just having it somewhere there in the subconscious. People become more uncomfortable in their own bodies. Sex becomes more aversive to people who are reminded of their own death. People have higher physical aspirations and say that they intend to spend more on clothing and entertainment. They also want more like cars and Rolexes and this kind of things. And I'll give you one more because I found this one really interesting. People who are reminded of their own death, there's a link between this and becoming more materialistic. People were asked to draw pictures of dollars and coins, and the people who were reminded of their own death drew physically larger pictures of dollars and coins. There is just this Niagara of evidence that the mere reminder of death in our minds astronomically increases our need for reminders about community, material goods, religion. You know, there's obviously a strong link. People who have a high death anxiety have been shown to be more religious, and that includes atheists, by the way. Even if you're an atheist, if you're reminded of your own death and you induce death anxiety within an atheist, they might not become religious, but they become more religious than they were before. The problem, of course, is that all of this seems to point to the idea of religion being essentially, as you say, a management of our fear of death, which many people might find quite upsetting and offensive. Because one of the key points of terror management theory is this happens subconsciously. People aren't going. This is what I think people need to understand. When I suggest that religion is an exercise in the denial of death, I'm not saying that people are consciously going, I'm going to die, I'm really terrified, I'm going to invent this story to help myself get out of it. This happens subconsciously. People really do believe that this stuff is actually true and has good philosophical and historical grounding because they have to. Because you couldn't deny death just for the sake of denying death, because you knew you would know that you're deceiving yourself. So of course people are really going to believe that this is a result of genuine philosophical, inquiry. But there's a good deal of evidence here that seems to suggest that at least part of religious belief has a lot to do with just the denial of death. I find that fascinating. Did you enjoy that clip? You must have done at least a little bit because you made it to the end. Well, guess what? There's more.
So humans have this problem with death, obviously, huh? So much so that we bury it, we don't talk about it, and it's always, all these actions are always outside of consciousness. That's really important. What he just said there is that
Sigmund Freud.
Sorry, we have this wonderful ability. It's scary. To lie and deny, and we do this with everything around this topic. So this is why I was just talking about these people that are really wrapped up in their cultural worldviews won't even acknowledge this stuff, because we live in it is a rumbling, a terror for people to think about this stuff. I'm going to do this. Having said this, I'm going to jump over here. Give me just a second. I'm going to stop the screen here for just a second. And I'm going to save this other portion for next week. We're actually going to talk about, I think this is George. It's interesting. The only death that exists is feeling separated from the creator. Yeah, those are the things that he was just talking about exactly. And I think all illusions aren't created equal. There's really good buffers to have, and religion, in a lot of senses, can be a really good buffer for people, right? A really good thing psychologically. For other folks, not so much, right? They could have experienced trauma or something, along those lines in there. But yes, religion is a big component. That's what most human beings relied on to buffer their anxiety and to answer the questions about, all this existential questions, right? The existentialism that we're talking about. Let's do this. I'm going to grab, Bernadette sent me a couple of images, and if you don't mind, Bernadette, oh, I just saw your email here. Sorry, I'll answer that. I was just turning her on to a film that we were talking about. Let me find your, all of a sudden now, let's see. Let's see. Maybe I can do a couple of technical questions too at the end. Okay, Bernadette, let me find your images are buried here. Hold on, bear with me for just a second. Okay, let me put them on the desktop. Painting and picture, okay. Here's the painting, we'll download that. I thought I had these out, but I didn't. That's okay, we'll do this. Okay, so shifting gears here a little bit. Bernadette, I'm gonna let you get on here and I'm gonna pull these. Which one do you want up first? Would you like to talk about first?
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Whatever you want to do. No, stop. Don't you bark.
Yeah, Michael just put in there, great clip. I agree with what he's saying. Religions are, yep, emotionally cycle. Yep, that's exactly, yeah. Among, pick your flavor, right? I mean, pick, my football team, my whatever, right? These things, you start seeing this everywhere. I promise you, once you get your head around these theories, you will see them in every human being, in every group, in every club. You'll see it right here in this group, right here too. You'll see it everywhere because this is our nature. So here we go. I'm going to pull up, share screen. Oh, let me put, what should I put these in? Can I just do them in, let me see if I can just do them in the preview or something here. Yeah, preview should work. Yeah.
Before you, while you're doing that, I just wanted to say, when you're talking about the whole death denial, which all of this is about, but
yeah,
have you ever read any of Scott and Helen Nearing's about them?
No, I haven't. You mean the actress or?
No, the Nearings were like your original homesteaders. Very interesting. Scott Nearing was very interesting.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
As far as like a death denial thing, I always admired what he did. He said that he was going to live to be 100. That's what he said. I'm going to live to be 100. So when he got to be 99 and he started getting feeble, he laid down, and his wife was there with him because they were just by themselves. He laid down and he stopped eating. And then a couple of weeks later, he started getting weaker and he stopped drinking. And he died right when he turned 100, which I always thought that was interesting. It was like this is what I'm going to do.
Almost willed it. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, I just, Scott Nearing was really, if you can.
I'll look the name up.
Good Life.
Yeah, it vaguely rings a bell.
Yeah.
It vaguely, maybe years ago or something. But
right.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm glad you brought that up because we will talk about at some point with some caveats here. We will talk about what it means to die by suicide. Now, Camus addressed it. Becker addressed it. Everyone addresses it, right? And they have a little different theories about it. It's still a bit of a mystery because if we're so afraid of death, if we're so afraid of not existing any longer, a psychological death, how do you explain these people offing themselves, killing themselves or dying by suicide is, I guess, a proper term. How do you explain that in psychological terms or even terror management terms? And there are some explanations, and they're plausible. They're pretty good. But thank you for sharing that. Thank you. I'm gonna let you. Let me pull this up and make sure I can get this here. Window. There it is. I'm gonna pull. I just happened. The first one was the photograph. So just context for this. This is Bernadette sent me 2 images here. The first one's a photograph, and the second one's a watercolor painting. So I'll turn it over to her, Bernadette. You go ahead and tell us about these.
This is just a Polaroid. I haven't made any plates yet. Sorry. I'm working on that. I'm trying to get all my stuff together, but we won't go there. Anyway.
Let's expand outside of that realm.
Yeah.
Let's say art. That's what we're about. Yeah, good.
I started getting back into the Polaroid thing a few years ago, but at first there was only the impossible film, which was basically impossible. I mean, you get, spend $20 and get like 1 image. So I actually got a couple out of this roll, but I just drag all this stuff around. So I should preface this by saying, and you might know, Quinn, I can't remember. I don't know if I heard her say it in an interview or I read it in her book, but Sally Mann said that her father told her, always put something interesting in a photograph. So I always think about that, some little odd thing that I can take and haul around to put in a photograph, whatever it may be. So I kind of did this with these creepy old dolls for a while. They went everywhere with me, and I took pictures of them doing things, and I hauled this chair down to the beach, and so she's just sitting there. She's just longing. She's longing to go somewhere, I guess. It's nothing too terribly deep. It's just cool looking.
Well, hold on there. I think there could be some really interesting stuff happening here. So my visceral reactions, and I know I had a little more time to spend looking at it when you sent it to me than people here in the room, but so my visceral reaction, and I knew the context of it. You'd already told me that you carry these objects and these things, and you do this, and that's interesting. Okay, that's interesting. So when I saw this image, when you sent it to me in email, and I pulled it up, when I saw this image, the first question that entered my mind is that I immediately went to, there's something about her being a little girl and being out in this vast kind of expanse, alone, isolated. It just brought up a lot of psychological stuff that way immediately, just because the composition, the content of it, the way you stopped that wave coming in, and then obviously the style of chair and the doll as a child. So that made me initially think, I wonder if she's playing with ideas of, isolation and abandonment and
Absolutely
terror and all of that stuff, right? Those are the things. So when we talk Rick Rubin's video, that clip we just watched, I think this is where he gets really profound. When you talk about, and I try to do this, I try to just stay opinion free until I actually hear about the work, but it's really hard as a visual person to look at images and not start, making things up. But I think Rubin had a really excellent point about come to this with the ability and the ideas and the possibilities behind the work to share with the viewer. Because like he said, and Bernadette and I had some interaction as well too over the week, I'm not sure how important the viewer's experience is for me as I am for my experience making the work. And so I probably would be asking your question, right? Why is this a doll? Why is this in the human form? Why is it that style of chair? Why did you compose it? And I know it's a Polaroid, so I know why it's square. But why did you compose it in such a way? And what is it behind these visuals that you're communicating? I know we use photography or imagery for a more impactful contribution to ideas that we can't really articulate in words. So my question would be, why did you make the choices you made with a human form, with a chair and the scene. And why is it black and white? Is that the feature of the film? Is it something you did? That kind of thing.
No, it was some of their film like that. But I really like what you said about, because I hadn't thought about it. This is what's so good about this, is like you can say something and you go, oh yeah, that's actually true. I like the idea of the isolation, you know, and when I think about it, a lot of my images and a lot of the things that I want to do are very stark with, like you said, one isolated thing. And I'm glad it made you think, because that's what I would like to be able to do, is just
yeah,
that's
and
cool.
yeah, and as these images go on, I mean, they're you know, you can. I don't know how everybody's got their own style of how they like to work. You know, Rick Rubin's got a style. You know, Sally Mann's got a style. Joe Blow's got a style. Everybody's got their own style, right? So I've always been convinced that a narrative is really good, right? It doesn't have to be, you know, the arc, you know, but it's not. It can be. In other words, this idea of picking something like isolation, right, and just working with isolation, just period, just working with isolation, and then on top of that, working in a style where you're examining as well too, right? Taking in these and here's where I go now. I would start laying theories and ideas over these things happening in my head and try to sort them out. That's exactly why I wanted to do these videos, was to try to help people, and myself included, and you guys help me too, and we all help each other, try to figure out ways to make art more impactful for ourselves first, to get this out and to get to find relief for ourselves, and then offer it up to the world and see, like Ruben said, see if something connects, if something works that way. But I think a big important part of offering it to the world is offering that context, like you just did, around that. So I can, and you did offer that context in the email too, because that's where I form my opinions as well on it. But yeah, that's great. That's great. Let's go to another one here. File, open. I wonder if I can just do this right on here without having to switch it around. No, I won't let me do it. So I got to stop the screen and share again. Share screen, window, and there it is. So here's her watercolor painting. This is. Tell us about this one.
This is like right out of my head. It's not copied from a picture or anything else. It was just like a scene that I saw in my head. And I think I told you in an email, I was used to do watercolors, and it was like every little detail and real persnickety and real careful and colorful. And then I decided to go just use a small limited palette. This probably has maybe 3 or 4 paints in it, and just work with real limited, because if the palette is limited, your imagination maybe isn't so limited. So by doing that, it was like these things just, I have several of them I've done, and they just like poured out of me. So that was kind of cool, because it wasn't worried about all these little details. And again, this is like what you were just saying about the isolation. This is kind of a lonely place. You know, I don't know if there's anything that interesting. I don't have any weird thing in it, but that's okay.
Well, can I tell you what I saw in? And again, I have a little advantage having had the email and the time to look at it here, but anyone's welcome, please. I'm sure Bernadette would be open to hearing anything. But one of the things that I'm really interested in is you know, like Becker said, you know, I want to know why people do what they do when they do it, right? So I'm really interested in the psychology, because it's all buried in these things we offer up to the cosmos, right? To relieve our anxiety. We don't even know what we're doing, and we're just throwing it out there. So the first thing that I noticed right off the bat was you've got 3 birds and you've got 3 trees. So I'm wondering why there are 3s in this image.
Because I always do things in odd numbers.
Okay.
Could have been 5 trees and 5 birds, but it would never been 4 and 4. It just wouldn't.
Just for the simple fact that don't step on the crack.
Right, it's like flower arranging, you know. Yeah. 3 flowers, not 2.
You know what's great though, Bernadette? I can tell just in the short time I've been conversing with you or communicating with you. You're a very creative person. I know that without question. Yeah. And I think like a lot of us have been through this stuff, and we can go years and years and years. And I don't know, why did this come earlier in my life? Why could, you know, all this stuff. But as you go through, I can tell you're very creative, but you need community to help.
Oh God, yes.
Find your ideas, right? To help you put words to these things so you can explain this to Rick Rubin when he looks at it, and then he can tell you if it's good or bad. So here's the thing. When we come, and your critique's great. This is great. This is wonderful, just to throw up a couple of images and just chat about it. Nobody's out to hurt anybody or make anything bad, or nobody's, no way. But what we're trying to do is open up the avenues to allow artists to, and I challenge artists all the time to do this. Tell me about this. Why did you make those technical choices? Why did you make those creative choices? Why? Where did this come from? Let's go upstream and find why those babies are being thrown in the river. That makes everyone's experience so much more profound and powerful. Isn't it great when you find an artist you like, and then all of a sudden you're online one day or something, and you're on YouTube or Vimeo or something or whatever, some streaming service, and you find a documentary behind the scenes on this artist? Isn't it just empowering to watch them work and what they do and listen to them and why they're making those choices? And notice, most every single one of them is going to be able to tell you what's up, right? I mean, in some way, even if it's a little esoteric for some of them, they're going to be able to tell you why they make the creative choices they do. Now, the danger with this is, and you'll hear this from people that say, oh, you go too far with this, Quinn. You're making it just a big analytical, cold, surgery of stuff, and you're not letting emotion and mystery and all. No, I am. I don't want to take it to the point where people are dissect. And I use the number, a flat brush and a acrylic paint with a little bit of, no, we don't want that far. But what we do want, we want a little bit of that stuff out of your brain right there. What drove you to do that? Because then we're working with that stuff outside of consciousness, and we want to pull that in and kind of give that to the viewer for context. But I really like both of these images.
Thank you.
For whatever reason, it doesn't really matter right now. I just appreciate you sharing something up here with all of us, and we appreciate that. But yeah, I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see your journey into wet collodion and see what you do there as well too.
Well, just one more thing, real quick, Quinn.
Sure.
It's like the images. It's like I want things to be simple. Like I was saying, the isolation thing with just one really interesting thing. And I think about this, I'm like, I want things to be simple, and yet I picked this kind of photography to learn. And really? Let's pick the hardest thing.
Well, what's ironic about wet collodion is that the images themselves are really basic and simple. If you look at the chemistry and the physics of everything, but the journey to get there can be a
There,
little bit
yeah.
complicated and complex.
It'd be like me going to the beach carrying the baby doll and the chair and the camera and the chemicals and
Couple of gallons of cyanide, on your back. What are you doing?
yeah, probably trip and fall with the camera in the water and
Exactly. Yeah, we're definitely all human. Hey, Chopper, good to see you. Quinn, are you familiar with the early photographer Myra Albert Wiggins, 1869-56? No, I'm not. The small book, which of Kodak covers her creative struggles as a woman. Oh, wow. We're going to have to look into that. Thank you, Chopper. See, this is what I love about having a community. People can come in here and pick these. These are critical pieces of information that we share with one another. And here's the problem. You've heard me complain about social media. I don't get social. There's good things about social media. Couple, maybe, but for the damage, quote unquote, it's caused, it makes some people a little bit hesitant to join in. But the problem with social media in that realm is you don't get small and intimate. I would love, there's like 10 or 15 people in here, right? I would love that's plenty. That's plenty. You don't need 5,000 people. We're not trying to sell anything or click on something or clickbait. We're not doing any of that. We're coming in as artists and saying, hey, let's share this stuff. Let's talk about this. Let's be open about what we're ignorant about. And I'm ignorant about plenty. And like Rick Rubin said, about the only thing I really know is that I don't know much. That's what I do know. Well, that's very kind of you, George. I appreciate that. You're one. I don't know about me being that, but he gave me a compliment. I appreciate it. But anyway, thank you for sharing those. Next week, I had a whole thing on. I want to jump into this idea of what's kind of next on terror management, incorporating some art and ideas that way with Otto Ronk in there. I want to revisit that again. But I want to talk about this idea of how human beings, it's a fascinating topic to create a work around this idea, how human beings separate themselves off in their will to supremacy, right? Their will to human supremacy, right, over other creatures, their will to supremacy, period, right? Your will over your neighbor to be better than them or to win the race or to do this or do that. And then some of the ideas behind the will to white supremacy and the will to some of these other things, right? The will to supremacy is prominent in human beings. And I want to talk about this idea that gives us the chutzpah, what's the English word for that? The gall to say we're above this or we're above that. Next week, let's come in here and talk about the reality of who we are as human beings and then incorporate some of these creative ideas into that. This is a topic, if you come back next week, this is a topic I guarantee you can make a couple of pieces of work about just getting some of the ideas out. And this is what's going to be fun as we go along here. We can start offering up little tiny things to do and to share about expressing these ideas and and it doesn't have to be wet collodion photography. It doesn't have to be anything like that. It can be, a little 3-line poem. It can be, a little performance, but a little sculpture, a little painting, a little whatever you might want to work in down the road. I'm trying to find ways to help artists use these ideas that they're drenched in, and most of them don't have any clue that they are. That's the point of it. I wasn't. I mean, I worked in the areas that these topics directly touched on: marginalization, otherness, all those kinds of ideas. I worked in a lot of those, but I could never articulate it. So next week, we're going to talk about that. What makes us human beings so macho and so great over everything else, and our will to supremacy, and then talk a little bit about how we can incorporate art and those ideas. And if anybody wants to share anything, email me through the week, wetplate@gmail.com. just email me. And if you have, we can throw up, that was great, Bernadette. We can throw up a couple of images here or there. Doesn't have to be a body of work, doesn't have to be anything. Hey, Linda. Well, thank you. She's all the way from Sweden there. Thank you very much. Yes, I think we can, only the second hour here, and I feel good. I feel good about this. I think there's some possibility here. We can do some, and help me, guys. help me find my way through this, because I don't want to have you guys saying, God, what is this guy rant? Man, this dude lives in his head. I don't know what he's talking about, right? So slow me down. Say, hey, wait, what do you mean by this, right? Stop me. This is a free flow thing. So jump in here, come back. Oh, that's cute, Bernadette. Come back in here next week if you can, or watch it afterward. But I'd love to have you in here, and I love the people live here. I see them on YouTube here, and I love having you guys in here. And Jeffrey and Bernadette, thank you so much for being the faces. And Pablo, brother, me gusta mucho su aquí, muy importante para mí. Thank you for being here. It's very important for me. Thank you. I appreciate that. He's our South American amigo from Argentina. He doesn't have his camera, but he's in here. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. If there's anything through the week, come on, shoot it over to me, and we'll try to fit it in. I know an hour is short, and I'm always going over these things because I'm so rambly. But anyway, you guys be safe, be happy, be full of gratitude, be glad you're above the ground every day that you are. And hopefully we're all back next week above the ground again, and we can do this again. Okay? You guys have a great weekend. Bye-bye. Thank you.